And it's pride pleasure to have all of you here. Before we start proceeding, I request WRC staff Mishaji to please play ICI motto.
य एष सुप्तेषु जागृति य एष सुप्तेषु जागृति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Faculty of the session CA Harish Sharma ji, Treasurer of WRC of ICI CA Ketan Saiya ji, my council colleague CA Ishwar Jivani, CA Ruta Chitle, Chairman of Anand branch of WRC ICI CA Ketan Samdani.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, and all participants. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fourth day of the session. I think today's topic is very critical and very important. Let's talk about process, end-to-end process audit. There is a lot of change from vouching to the process-based audit, and every corporates are looking for a identification process and audit thereafter. And we are having a dignitary who has immense experience of himself looking after the inter-audit function of one of the largest corporate group in the world. So today, our learnings will be something from the stalwart of professionals who have been dealing with these issues. Before we invite him, I request Treasurer of WRC, CA Ketan Saiya, to share few words.
Thank you, Chintan Bhai. Let me compliment the young and dynamic Honorable Chairperson of WRC RPG and Chintan Patel for a wonderful series. Yesterday we did talked about standard operating practices and interplay of it's with the risk metrics. Now it's a time to understand end-to-end process. Obviously, in any large organization, as told by Chintan Bhai, there are set processes, and many a time it happens that these processes are blindly followed, are overlooked, and by passage of time it calls for changes, it requires for changes. And when we carry out a process audit, end-to-end process audit, let's say it's a function of purchase, beginning with the purchase order, looking at the reorder quantity and how to order, what kind of quotations are called. So start to end, if we revisit one process, we realize that it might require changes based on the change which have happened in the environment, which have happened in the corporate world. A lot of time, there are a lot of easy and lesser cost involving processes have evolved, but the corporates are still following those old processes, and where we as an expert on internal audit, we have to suggest them to cut down on some process, improvise upon some process. And I think we have very, very learned speaker, Harish Sharma from, as told by Chintan Bhai, one of the largest group, Adani Group. And a person like him will definitely do a justice to this process audit. And very important topic to my mind also. Thanks to him for sparing his valuable time, sir, on behalf of Western India Regional Council of ICI. We are really thankful to you for sparing your valuable time. Thank you so much. Over to you, Chintan Bhai.
Thank you, Ketan Bhai. And the very, very important thing is that this particular internal symposium is being jointly organized by various branches across region. The objective of this particular program making online, that we wanted to have the knowledge to be spread across region. And Anand branch has proudly hosted jointly with WRC this particular symposium, and we are having the branch chairman Kitan Samdani ji here. So I request Kitan bhai to share a few words.
Thank you, Chintan sir. Audible?
Yes, audible.
Thank you. Namaste, myself CA Ketan Samdani, Chairman of Anand Branch of WIRC of ICA. Feel glad to address our participants in today's session on Internal Audit Symposium. Internal audit is a dynamic and ever-evolving field. Also, it plays indispensable role in an organizational implementation of internal controls. Internal audit is no longer a compliance task. It has evolved as a tool for strategic decision making and business planning. I am sure that these sessions will add value to our participants. I take this opportunity to express deep sense of gratitude to our own RCM, Chintan sir, for granting this opportunity to join this webinar. Thank you. Wish you all very happy learning. Over to Chintan sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Ketan bhai, for accepting our request to spread the words and awareness about internal audit at Anand also. And now I request my council colleague C. Ishwar bhai Jivani to share his words and also have a brief profile of our today's faculty, C. A. Harish Sharma.
Thank you, Chintan bhai, for giving me a chance to introduce the faculty which is there to guide us on end-to-end process. Sri Harish Sharma ji. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our today's speaker, Harish ji. He is Group Head Management Audit and Assurance Services at Adani Group, with around 24 years of experience spanning across various businesses such as thermal generation, transmission, distribution, mining, renewable energy, city gas distribution, ports and logistics, as well as real estate and infrastructure projects. Have a expertise in management audit, assurance, governance, compliance, and internal audit. He has successfully overseen numerous critical and strategic initiatives, including merger and acquisition transactions within the risk and assurance realm. He has led a transformation effort in the assurance function. He has played a pivotal role in digital transformation and technology readiness drive, resulting in optimization of cost of assurance. With this, I introduce before you Harish Sharma ji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishwar bhai. I think we just look at today we are going to really have a lot of understanding learning from the corporate, the way they have really implemented. It's not about just a theoretical, it's a real practical world. And with this, I am thankful to Harish bhai for acceptance to my request and sharing his valuable thoughts. So not taking much time, I'm requesting the faculty of the session, CA Harish bhai Sharma ji, to please address the audience about the end-to-end process audit.
Yeah, thank you, Chintan bhai. So, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, great. So, I will start with, I will just share my screen. So, just let me know once my screen is on.
It's visible now.
Visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, is it visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, the agenda or the discussion point is to cover the end-to-end process audit. So, Chintan, we just want to understand, is it a one-way discussion, or is it somewhere I can raise and ask them to clarify some aspect, or it could be a more interactive session? How is it we want to plan?
Yes, sir, interactive can be done, but maybe at a later part, once you can share your thought process, because there are around, it will be difficult for all to like unmute and mute, because at this juncture, from admin point of view, we have make it mute. So once you close your session, they can raise question in Q&A, and maybe then thereafter we can make it interactive by unmuting and muting.
Sure. Thanks, Chintan, for clarifying this. So let us start with the objective that what is the internal audit. First of all, I will start. So end-to-end process audit is the outcome or the areas on which the auditor play. But before that, we just want to understand what internal audit means. What is it is there. So as per the definition, we are internal auditor is at a third lines of defense. So what is the first and second line of defense? So first line of defense is the guys who are the operation and the business unit, who himself who controls the business, who decide on the policies and the procedures related to business. They are the guys who are addressing the various risks related to strategic, operation, financial, and compliance. Then come the second line of defense. So who is all second line of defense? So second line of defense covers the monitoring role, which includes financial controls like F&A, CFO, FP&A, so financial planning and control. Then we have a security management guys. Then we have a risk management, quality assurance group, inspection, compliance. So all are these are at a second line of defense. So what is that? It is somewhere it's a kind of monitoring control. So these departments do a monitoring control. So operation guy and the business guys do a business and on the set processes and guidelines. And these guys are overseeing whether that guidelines and processes are being followed by the business or not. So that is they are at a second line of defense. So ideally in any business, the first and second line should be very strong enough. So that was the key for the success of any business. So any objective or any rule by the senior management is to ensure that the first and second line of defense are strong enough. And then comes the third line of defense. So third line of defense, which we called as a management audit and assurance services here. So it is basically an internal audit. It is a kind of assurance function who sees whether the first and second lines are working properly or not. So our role as a third line of defense is more on the management actions, whether has been in line with the policies and the procedure. So the third lines of defense role would be like giving assurance. They are giving assurance to the boards, to the CEO, to the senior management, whether the governance, risk, and management controls are as per the defined guidelines or not. So whether it is the assurance regarding the efficiency and the effectiveness of GRC, basically governance, risk, and compliances. And this function is always remain an independent function. So the internal auditor, the role overall, the function is that it remains independent and they report directly to the board. So board get assurance whether all the policies and the procedures and the guidelines are being followed or not. Whereas as I mentioned, the role of second line of defense, that is more from the financial, security, and risk management, is to monitor the adequacy and effectiveness of the internal control activity. So internal control activity, which has been defined by the business unit, operation unit, with the help of the second line, and they monitor whether that guidelines, that process has been followed or not. So assisting, they are assisting management in designing and development of process and control, and they escalating the critical issues, emerging risk and outlier, and providing the overall risk management framework. So these are the second line of defense who ensure that the designs and the development of the processes are proper, and then they monitor it, and if they are not been followed, then they escalate it, and then providing overall risk management framework. Whereas the first line, which is a business itself, they himself is identify the risk, they analyze the risk, assess the fraud, and then what are the control activity. Control activity means if they assess the risk either at a functional level or at a business level, what are the controls, what are the activity they need to develop in terms of IT, in terms of human resource, in terms of the processes. So they define all this through their policies and procedures, and then have a proper governance mechanism. So once they have defined this kind of control activity, how to get that information, whether they have been implemented properly or not, they define the information and communication matrix, which has been being supported by the second line of defense. So they review, they monitor that overall governance procedure, and then they escalate to the senior management in case if it is not done. So this is what the first and second line of defense work, and then the independent assurance functions, internal audit comes and see whether the first and second lines are working properly or not, and give independent assurance to the board and to the senior management that these are the laid down policies and procedures are completely followed, and if it is not, what are the exception, and that exception has to prioritize in terms of the risk category like high, medium and low, so that they understand the areas on which they have to prioritize and take action. So this is a broad understanding and the broad objective of the internal audit function. So first of all, as an auditor, as an internal auditor, we need to understand the roles which we need to play. So it should not happen that we compromise with our independency and work as a second line of defense because we remain as a third line. Our role is to ensure that the first and second line should work properly. So if it's not been worked properly, for example, if I give that defining a SOPs. So the last session you have SOPs and the risk and control metrics. So suppose if management asks that to internal audit, why don't you define the SOPs? So then SOPs, because then it would be a conflict of interest. So if internal auditor defining a SOP and work with the business, then their independency would be lost. So and that is not a sustainable methodology, because every time there would be a change in the process, the environment changes, the management has to identify that changes and made a necessary changes in the SOP. So as a auditor role would be how these processes are being streamlined. So is there anyone who is at a regular interval identifying the change in the process? They identified the risk associated with that. Is there new technology or IT related changes are there? Is a new process has been introduced and how it has been followed? So the auditor role would be more into seeing that whether that governance process is working properly or not at first level as well as second level. If it is not, then he has to analyze and then take up with the senior management, either if it is a CEO, it's a board of director, it depends upon the company, and then try to resolve this issue. So that would be more from the preventive action. Internal auditor can suggest the preventive actions which could be taken based on his insight, because he is expertise in the understanding the gaps and control gaps and suggesting the mitigation on that. So he can work along with the business and understand the root cause of the gaps and then suggest the controls which could address this kind of issues. So this is how the whole role of internal audit is working. So that is the prime, or that would be the key to start with. What is the role of first line, second line, and third line? And once that role is clear, then the whole other gamuts of the internal audit will start. So Chintan bhai, I am audible and clear on that. So I just want a
Yes,
confirmation.
I think you are audible and clear, and it is really, you have already given a lot of very, very important part of first line, second line. I think
Yeah, so because actually my is more from the interaction point of view which
Yes.
I am taking. So that is why in between I will take a confirmation, so that if I am going little fast or if the content is required more clarity on it, so please let me know on that.
Sure, sure. And in case if you want to do interaction, you can also ask me question just to, because I understand that you are primarily more focused more on interaction point of view. So we both can also exchange the thought process if required.
Yeah, sure. So in between, if someone can record or ask question, want clarification, they can put up in the chat, so that by the time if anyone from you can interrupt me and I can explain that part. So that would be correlated with the subject. Otherwise, it would happen that after that time they may not able to clarify what I really want to mean by that. If it is on this slide and if any question comes, please let me know so that I can clarify as well.
Yes, I think the point which suggested by faculty is very important, that if you have any question, don't there's no need to wait till end. Put in Q&A, put in chat box, and basically then, or you can put in Q&A. Praveen Kumar, you can put in Q&A. I will ask the admin to also enable chat box by that time.
Yeah. So okay, fine. Right. Good. So we'll move forward now. So this is what I have explained, that the role of first line of defense, which involve business and operating people, they take and own the risk. They design and execute control to respond that risk. So that is one part. Second, the second line of defense is, as I mentioned, it covers F&A, IT, HR, HSE, legal, secretarial. These are all guys who oversee what are the operating people and the business as defined, and they perform same as management function, oversees many aspects of risk management. And third line of defense as the internal auditor will come as and oversees the overall performance of the first and second, and then suggest the management on the and give assurance on the efficiency and effectiveness of the controls and the process which they have been following. As I mentioned, they are not permitted to perform any management function because it would have a conflict of interest, and then the objectivity and the organizational independence would be compromised. Yeah, so I just take you through each of these aspects. So because each of these aspect is very important to understand, because this is the crux and these are the areas which lead to the end-to-end process audit, the subject which we want. So first of all, we understood our role as an internal audit. What is our role? So first that is understood. Then we need to have a understanding about what is the risk, what is the overall risk to the organization. So first of all, that is the prime aspect to understand, because no audit could be done unless you understand the risk and which is having an impact and materiality to the organization. And after that only the audit process will start. So the risk identification is one of the very important aspect. So when you do a interaction, so how you will identify the risk? So there are various methods which we deploy here. So one is that based on the because we have a continuous audit and we have an audit department, so we have a legacy of the information, what was been the area of concern, what was the observation raised, and what was the problem. So that has helped us to identify the areas which need to be focused on. So that was a one input. Another is that we have a discussion with the board of director, with the senior management, which includes CEO, COO, CFO, and we run the whole workshop at the start of the year in the month of say January and February before the start of the next financial year. So to understand their viewpoint, they understand their understanding about the risk. Is there the new emerging risk or new areas? Is there any process has been changed or any new IT tool or the platform has been deployed? So that these are the all key inputs to understand the certain operational risk which are coming up. So that will decide into your priority list. Apart from that, there is a certain regulatory requirement, certain compliances which are being attached to that business or to the function. So that is important for defining what are the risks to be covered into that. And apart from that, there are certain financial analysis. So in terms of the company's analysis about their various cost driver, what are the key cost driver of that organization, what are the business driver, how they drive the business, what are the competitive advantage we have compared to others. So these are all the parameters which we covered into our annual risk assessment process. And then based on this is what we call as the audit universe. So audit universe for that entities covers locations, cover processes, covers risk associated to that. So this becomes the overall audit universe. So you cannot cover all the audits in a year. So because you have a 2-3 aspect. One is the overall resource optimization or resource constraint you have. That is a one part. Second, you need to focus on the key or important risk, because that will impact the organizational objective or the profitability or optimization of the cost. So for that, you need to prioritize the audit universe. And how to prioritize that audit universe? You need to define the risk parameter. What are the risks on which you will define? So some company use a 9-grid matrix. So the whole this has been divided into high, medium, and low. So some use a 16-grid matrix. So this is a matrix, but ultimately it is based on the impact that particular audit universe or auditable unit have an impact, and what is the likelihood of that impact. So based on that, they define that auditable unit. For example, if I take one process like procurement or marketing or record to report or maybe a maintenance management. So these are all the operational things. But when we see that is in terms of what is its value in terms of the cost, what was the last year audit observation, how is going to impact? Because for example, preventive maintenance have a higher impact if I look from the thermal plant basis, because any problem in any one equipment, the plant will stop, and that would have a very big impact on the revenue, on the profitability. For that business, preventive maintenance or the maintenance process is a very critical process, because it have a very high impact on the operational continuity. Whereas in other business, for example, maybe a mining business or maybe any other financial service business, where the maintenance is more from the supportive function rather than a key business function. From that, the risk would be either medium or low, whereas in the power plant, the maintenance would be very high risk. So what I'm saying that this definition of audit universe, and after defining a audit universe, what is its impact, or what is their importance in the overall organizational objective? So from that, you define as a high, medium, low, because as an auditor you need to focus, and even a management also want that the auditor should focus on the high and medium. That would be a more focus, because if anything goes wrong into that, that have a higher probability of a loss or the revenue loss in terms of market share loss or the customer loss. So that is why it is important to define your audit universe line with the risk prioritization. Based on that risk prioritization, then you decide that these are the areas which you are going to work on, or these are the areas on which you are going to audit on. So this is what it comes as an annual audit plan. So I have explained you about like annual risk review. That is something we said about the audit universe. And to define annual risk review, there is a workshop, there is a past audit observation, your data analytics comes into that. So there is various ways of doing that annual risk review. And then based on that, with the discussion with the management, your own understanding as a head of the department from the internal audit, connecting with the COO and the CFO, then you will define the annual audit plan. So this is how the first part done. One is that what is your role? You understand that I am going to give assurance to the senior management on the efficiency and the effectiveness of the process, on the policies, on the guidelines, and for which areas I have to give it. So there is a laundry list. There is a whole audit universe on which I can give. But what management, what board prioritize me, and based on that annual risk assessment, annual risk review, you come up with the annual audit plan, which has been approved by the board, by the senior management, that yeah, this is the area, please go through it, review it, and then give me a assurance whether we are on track or is there any derailer on that. And if it is, then please escalate and then come up with the action plan in support with the management. And then board and senior management will keep a track of it and ensure that it is implemented. So this is how it able to achieve the objective of the organization. So everyone have a role. Business has to perform and generate the revenue. Second line of defense has to keep a monetary control on it. And then last will come a third line of defense, or the internal auditor, based on the risk understanding and risk review, come up with the annual audit plan. And then they will say and review that areas, and then suggest whether we are on track and whether the processes, the controls and the policies has been followed or not. So this is the first part of it. So Chintan bhai, any questions in between?
Yes, I think there's one question in Q&A box. If we just click on that Q&A box.
Just a minute. Yeah. So in first line and second line defense, when they are orally work as a company or industry practice and not defined and or documented, then how can we process on third line of defense and give assurance? So point is that the definition, because it is not documented, but it is a practice been followed. If it has been documented, that's a very good thing. But if it is not documented, because it's a general understanding, because there is a department and every department knows what the purpose of that department is. So that defines there whether that department falls under the first line, whether if it is a operation guy or marketing guy or production guy, definitely their work is to produce or sell that thing. So that will always become, because they are the guys who run the business, who ensure that the profitability will come. Then there would be enabler service like financial controller, then FP&A, HR, who is supporting IT, who is supporting the business to ensure that their works are being properly done. And at the same time, they are working as a monetary control. So they are the kind of a torchbearer, kind of a the controller who ensure that they should not deviate from the set guidelines or the broad guidelines set by the CEO or maybe by the boards or the promoter on that. So that is somewhere they will come to that. And then definitely as an internal auditor, because there are already a defined definition, there are standards of the internal auditors, like Institute of Internal Auditor has defined the role of internal auditor, what to do, what not to do. So that could be used as a base, and then you can process as a third line of defense and give assurance on that if it is not been documented on that. So great, good. So any such question, please post it so that by the time we are going on the discussion, we can answer that question as well. So that is the first part. Now it comes to the end-to-end audit process. So we have discussed about the role of internal audit, how it has been, once that has been done, what are the annual risk assessment or the annual, based on a annual risk assessment, you come up with the audit plan. Now come the areas of end-to-end process audit. So again, based on the risk assessment, because this is a very starting point, which areas to be covered under end-to-end process audit. So end-to-end process audit gives a holistic assessment. So it is giving a overall end-to-end process audit provides a comprehensive view of how a specific business process function perform. So that this helps the auditor understand the workflow, its dependency, and interaction within the process, rather than just focusing on the individual component or task. This holistic assessment is essential for identifying risk and weaknesses that may be apparent when looking at the isolated segment of the process. So to explain or to understand this aspect is, suppose we took a example of procure to pay. So ideally, traditionally, when we review, because there are various such processes which we can do end to end, which is include like which is the terminology used is procure to pay, then order to cash, record to report, hire to retire, project management. So there are various terminologies are using which we cover as a end-to-end process audit. So I'm just giving an example like order to cash. So in order, procure to pay. Now procure to pay include various sub-component of process. So which includes vendor selection. First of all, it includes vendor selection. After vendor selection, you need a requisition. After requisition, you will float a request for proposal, and then comparative assessment. They will give a quotation, then negotiation, comparative statement, approval. Then you have after approval, you will have a contract with the vendor. So that was the agreement and contracting. After agreement contracting done, then the vendor will supply the good. Then you will have a GRN of that. After GRN, then you will receive an invoice from them. After invoice, use that in SAP system, there would be a three-way match, MyGo, Myro. So that will happen. After that, the payment will be done. And after payment, that could be a last would be a where you have suppose retained something or the closure of the contract. So this is what the, in brief, the various component of the procure to pay. Now, traditionally, how this audit being done, there would be a three different audit. One is that vendor onboarding process. So right from create selection of the vendors and then creating a vendor. So that would be one process. And another would be a procurement process. We start with the requisition and ends with the placement of the order. So that was the audit which we do. Third would be done after the receiving of the goods. So once that has been placed, the third audit is that once the goods are received and the payments are been done, what are the controls into that? So these are the three component of it. So again, to do a end-to-end process audit or do a segment audit or these three audit, so there is not anything wrong and right. Again, this is depend upon your risk assessment. So if you do a risk assessment and you find that the whole process where the procure to pay, you are taking time and there are various issues coming up which is a dependency of the procurement. Suppose that payment has been delayed. Why it has been delayed? It has been due to because of the procurement process where they, when creating the order, they have done a mistake. So if that, when do a risk workshop, understanding from the past observation, when you feel that it's required these areas to be audited end to end, cover all these aspects which are interdependent, which are process requirement to identify the gap so that the action could be taken. So that areas you decide as a end-to-end process audit. So suppose to get a maximum out of that, because as I mentioned, there are number of areas, number of dependency, right from vendor onboarding to requisition to commercial comparatives and negotiation, ordering. So to cover that, you can select based on that we should cover end-to-end audit of this process. So as I mentioned, that would be a defined audit on universe. That audit universe need to be prioritized based on that, whether it has to be done a single audit or it has to be done a end-to-end process audit. So where you will find that the objective or the controls are required to be robust enough to achieve the organizational objective, you covered as an end-to-end process audit. So now once you have defined so that these areas to be done end-to-end process audit, then what would be the process? So once that has been done, you will come up with the engagement level planning. For example, we decided that procure to pay, we want to take as an end-to-end process audit. So what are the sub-component of that? So once that has been decided, so we need to start with the objective setting. So why you want to do a procure to pay audit? What is the objective? So is there somewhere we want to improve or reduce the cost of our procurement? That is the objective. So no audit can be done unless that objective is clear, because if you do something without any objective, you will come up with the observations which may not be very relevant, because there are the whole gamut of the areas which you need to verify and where to focus upon. If the objective is not clear, you will focus on the areas which may not be that critical, that important for that particular audit. So first of all, you need to decide on the objective of that audit. If we are taking a procure to pay, I could have a 2 to 3 key objective. I want to ensure that there is no fraud into that process. That could be a key objective of when we are doing from procure to pay, because that could be in procurement. You will may have observed that there could be a various fraudulent kickbacks are being done. So I want to give assurance to the management whether there is any fraudulent related red flags are there, or is there any fraud or not. And second is that the overall time, because if you do not procure on timely manner, you will have an impact on your business, because you then the vendor would be delayed onboarded. Delayed onboarded will deliver the items or the goods or the equipments delayed will impact on the project or the operations of the business. So that is very important to decide the objective, why I'm doing that audit, and that is what it comes as the objective of audit. Once we have a audit universe, based on that audit plan is prepared, or based on audit plan we have identified one areas which we need to do a end-to-end audit. And once that end-to-end audit done, what we are going to give assurance, what is the objective of that audit, we need to define on that. Once that has been done, we will start a engagement level planning. So that's one objective is done, we will have a engagement level planning. So for that end-to-end audit, you need to have understand all the process mapping. So without process understanding, you cannot do or give assurance or come up with the judgment whether that process is been robust, is it in line with the controls or the guidelines which has been mentioned. So process mapping is a very crucial fundamental or foundation step in the audit process, because it provides the visual representation of the entire workflow, because which enable the auditor to identify weakness, assess risk, ensure compliance, and based on that they can allocate resource effectively for doing the audit. So that is a process mapping is very important, because based on the process mapping you may require certain skill sets. Maybe for certain area you require a technical skill, for certain area you can require a commercial skill to understand, because to assess that if you do not have a process mapping, you cannot come up with that plan. And that is also important to understand what is the root cause analysis of that. And understanding the entire process flow is critical for the audit process. It sets the stage for the comprehensive and effective examination of the overall operation of it. So that is a very important aspect of that. So once we have done that process mapping for covering end-to-end process audit, so after process mapping, we identified the risk, because for in the last session you have gone through a risk and control matrix. So once that you have defined that, you will come up with the various risk assessment. So on suppose we continue with the same example of procure to pay, then you have to identify the risk, because again in that whole thing, which are the for that process there are multiple risk associated to that. So you have to identify risk, and then it has to be first subdivided into sub processes. For example, in that first sub process start with the vendor onboarding. So vendor selection and vendor onboarding. So what are the risks? So that could be a risk like there could be a favoritism, or the vendors which are relative of someone has been onboarded. So is there proper due diligence of the vendor has not been done? So these are the certain critical risk into that sub processes. So you have to identify that the vendor should be fairly selected. So for that what is the control associated to that? So that is somewhere you have to identify this risk at all the process levels. So that's the vendor selection and onboarding. After vendor selection, the requisition, is the requisition has been approved properly, or it's been authorized with authorized requisition has been received. If it is unauthorized requisition, then you can land up with the excess procurement. So that is somewhere. Third would be, once that requisition has been done, is there proper request for proposal has been signed? So it has been signed to the relevant vendor, so that you can get a best quote out of that. So this is a whole risk identification process you done. And then risk identification again correlated with their prioritization, because again once you covered as an end-to-end process of a procure to pay, then these are the risks associated to this particular process audit, and then you have to identify it again with the impact and likelihood on the process objective. So again you have to prioritize between high, medium, low, because again in that the success of that particular end-to-end process depends upon the control activity of that high risk area, medium risk area. If has been properly controlled, if they are being properly monitored, then that process is being robust. And once that process is robust, you can give assurance to the management on the key objective which you have defined, in terms of either fraud, or in terms of the optimization of the cost, or on the timeliness of the order placement, or any other compliance related aspect, if you are want to give assurance on that. So that is a very important to prioritize the risk on that. And then you have to do overall what is their mitigation controls allowed to that. For that, as I mentioned, there would be a to identify in that end-to-end process of procure to pay, You can cover a process flow analysis. So this is a similar, like I have a broad high level process, but this is somewhere you can use this as a procure to pay, where we have mentioned like annual planning, fieldwork, which I have mentioned. You can put up that vendor onboarding or requisition, or then these are the sub component or sub processes, and what are the process flow or how the whole process work on that. You can do a historical data and trend analysis. You can analyze the past data, audit reports, incident to identify such any issues has been observed into that particular audit area. You can take a input from the process owner or employee, so who can provide on the overall operational challenges which they are going through. Is there any regulatory and compliance frameworks associated to that, and how they are being monitored on that? So is there any benchmarking you can use for that procure to process? If you can use a benchmarking, that could be a two-way benchmarking. If you are checking that process at if you have a multiple plant, you can compare that process from one plant to another. If you have a you can also get a access or insight from the other company also, from the similar size, how they are being monitored. There is there certain key parameter, key performance indicators which you can get access, and then you compare your performance or your this process audit performance compared to the other, and is there matching with that. So these are the various methodology of doing a risk assessment. So yeah, so is there any other question? I just see. Can you share some practical example of process mapping? Okay, so process mapping. So when I said that you have to identify the risk, so process flow. So when you prepare, suppose this is a process flow. As I mentioned, we are continuing with the same example of procure to pay. Now there are 20 activities in that process. So as I mentioned, one is that vendor onboarding, quotation, requisition, then price comparison, quotation, price comparison, approvals, contracting, GRN. Then you have quality assessment of whatever the material, then payment. So these are all sub component of that process. Now under process mapping, this is the ideal process one has to follow. So you suppose took a period of last 6 months or 9 months, and you plot each such transaction. You have all plot one PO against this subcomponent, and you see from the last 6 months what is the process. So you can keep it in the flow chart, or you can connect with the dots, and you will see is there any deviation. Because if suppose that during the 6 month, if you have been placed suppose 100 purchase order, so out of 100 purchase order, or maybe 1000 purchase order, after 1000 purchase order, when you map these processes, these idle processes against that 1000 purchase order, if you find that only 5% or 6% are deviation, then that's that process mapping will able to see that there is no major deviation. But if it has been not, these steps are not been followed, this process mapping will show a figure or the drawings or the picture that was haphazard, and that will give a kind of a view that how this process is being followed. So this is one of the example of process mapping. Process mapping, you can do it any process which have a sequential process to follow. For example, order to cash, again there is a sequential process to be followed, and you can map that sequential process with the transaction, and then under process mapping you can see the deviation to that. So this is under process mapping. So this is something which covered under what I say, it's the engagement planning, because end-to-end process you have covered the what is the objective. Once you have done that objective, you have come up with process mapping. So once that process map has been done, what can go wrong? So you have done a risk assessment to that. So once that risk assessment done, you have prioritized into high, medium, low, and then you can use the data analytics. So that is something is now you have to actually evaluate the control. So what is the controls which has been mentioned again, that risk to mitigate that, you have to evaluate that control. So actually reviewing the control design for like error, for fraud, which we have mentioned, or the compliance. So that is required, or we need a proper segregation of duty, whether the SODs has been followed or not. So you have to confirm these controls are applied as designed, and then document that how you have checked that part. And after this testing through various methods to verify the effectiveness, you come up with the weak point in the control implementation that could affect the objective or the compliance. So you test the control for each risk. What are the controls has been defined? You test that control, and then you can identification of the control gaps onto that. So best practices for the control evolution, which include a risk-based approach focusing on the high risk area. So that, as I mentioned, that you can identify the high risk in that particular process of procure to pay, and then you use to test that. You test based on the various audit trail, the documentation they have put up on that. You leverage the data analytics and the technology to test the control. Is there any exceptions to that? So based on that, you can evaluate the controls. So again, based on that, the whole importance. So earlier used to be, I just shared the examples, a practical example which we used to do when we are doing an audit. So earlier we used to select samples, and based on that sample, we do end-to-end testing of that. So, but it would be a very limited sample. It could be in value term would be at 20%, and in quantity would be, in numbers would be less than 100 samples, or maybe near to that. But that was the initial. But now our all the processes are being in SAP or the ERM. We have certain specific tools has been deployed. So now it is not the case where we give a assurance based on the limited number. So we do a lot of use on the data analytics, and that become very important in our end-to-end process audit. So which actually help us in identifying anomalies, trends, and irregularities, because as I mentioned, these are the process are very sequential, and this data points through this SAP system will give us the clarity on the trends, clarity on the irregularities, clarity on the process that they have been followed, and which become very easy for us to come up with a deviation and give assurance on almost all the transaction, rather than selecting on certain limited number of transaction. So that was really helping us on that. So that is somewhere we can do data analytics, and we check all the anomalies and variations which we can identify during that. So is there any other questions come?
Yeah, checkbox. I think you've seen checkbox.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, okay. I think I have answered that. So please raise a question. So because it becomes so monologue, so I want that I just want a confirmation whether people understand and team understand. If not, please raise a question so that I can able to give more explanation on the areas which required.
Yeah, I have one question and
Sure.
curiosity to understand from you, if you permit.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Adani Group has been using a technology like anything, because I have opportunity to visit one of the premises, and I can see the dashboards outside the premises where a lot of things have been going, and using chatbot also. So in internal audit per se and in process audit, can technology be used, and how it can be used?
So that is, Chintan, it's a good question. So what we have done in a process audit, as I mentioned, so we have developed hundreds of exceptional reporting. So if I mention, I just have some of the examples ready. I just share with you. So yeah, for example, these are the all automated tests. I'm just giving some of the example. These are all automated tests. There no one has to go and check that system generate this exception. So like PO raised without PR, PO quantity is greater than PR quantity, instances of GRN quantity greater than purchase order quantity, duplicate purchase requisition, delay in purchase creation to PR approval, delay between PO date and PR approvals, instances of PR change after PO placed, unapproved requisition having purchase order, instance where PO creation date is prior to PR creation date. These are the whole more than 300, 400 exception list which we have
Oh.
done. And this is somewhere that you not required system will, because that every data point has been now captured into the system, and these are is a bot or it is a some kind of exception reporting which are showing this exception, and this has been now been so robust that these are the exceptions. So and auditor has not to wait for it, system will generate a report and give it to the business that this is the exception which are, it's a kind of a real-time continuous auditing kind of thing, so that people are aware that these are the exception, and then they should have to explain that, and that next time there would not be any deviation. So rather than waiting for a year or 6 months when the auditor comes and then again based on certain sample and do audit, that really it's not a current way of doing, because in the technology, in the fast changing, you need to work on the data analytics, you need to follow the digitization and digitalization approach, and that is something where we have been following this and covering, and then we are enhancing, we are adding reports one after another, so that our dependency on the manual audit or the post audit is minimized, and our focus, our areas and vision is that it should be online, it should be continuous thing, and we are working as a trusted advisor rather than a kind of a post-mortem and then policing that. So we are want to help the business in the way that guys, it should not happen that after 6 months then we come and then we do a deep root cause analysis. Better than you can identify these issues upfront and solve these issues. So then the dependency on the third line of defense, our objective, as I mentioned, our role is more to strengthen first and second line of control. It should not happen audit ne kya kiya. So we want to create a system, an environment and a framework where first and second line has been continuously feeding into the areas where they are lacking in terms of the controls. Is there a gaps are there, and they can work on, so that when we do an audit of it, the exception should be minimized, because there is no fun in getting an exception or the observation. The area, the success of the audit would be more when we see that there is no high or medium level observation. It's more of a low level that gives a lot of satisfaction to the stakeholder, to the shareholder, that yeah, that everything is working fine as per the defined objective. And that is what our motto and goal is, that we should work where we get a very minimum observation and the systems and the processes are work, and where we can use a technology, where we can use a data analytics, so that will help in improving the efficiency of the organization. So that is somewhere we are working hard on it.
I think that also gives one very important feeling that probably next future the role of introvert will be completely different, because when the first and second line difference is so strong, 300 plus exceptions you will note it down, and that is part of management. So the onus will be different on the internal auditor, because management already is aware about 300 plus exceptions. Now it is onus on the internal auditor and to come and identify something different which management doesn't know. So this is going to be a very challenging task for internal audit.
Yeah, so it's a Chintan, that is a very true, because that is what is been changing the whole approach. That is again a traditional approach with the transactional insight. When if you have been part of such we have been part of such an international conference which we held, so that the role of the internal audit has been changing. It is more being pushed toward the trusted advisor, where they want to sit along with the CEO and then working on the business strategy, we're working on that, helping on that thing. So that is where they understand the business, they understand what are the risks emerging. So right now we are moving from the operational controller to more from the risk controller, because earlier our focus would be more to see and give assurance on the operational efficiency and the effectiveness in terms of like inventory management, procurement process, marketing process, financial aspect, maintenance process. This is more of a operational thing. So once we are being, our role is that once we stabilize this, if we improve through our data analytics and the digitization. For your kind information, we got from the Institute of Internal Audit, Adani Group got a award for the best use of technology in internal audit. So that is a 2 years we are from the last that we are getting the award also from the Institute of Internal Audit. So a point is that we are moving towards more from traditional or the transactional audit to more from the strategic audit. So we help the, suppose I just give one example that we are working on that areas. For example, I just we are working on the how the risk. Suppose if we are coming up with the new business now, so what are the key risk assessed to that? So now we have gone into the thing where we have referred to the various legal things in that business. What are the issues has been come? So because any of risk, either it's a contract management or is it in a procurement, it you landed up into certain kind of case, either in High Court, Supreme Court. So whatever the exception, either in the protection, is it a contracting, is it a pricing related? Because if anything happens on that dispute has been come to any court, so we are now taking a base of that as a legal and then come up with the area in which when we are defining our process, we ensure that this kind of anomaly should not be there in our process, so that which land up later on some certain kind of conflict. Because risk, any matter if you consider any kind of, because what happen, either interpretation issues or maybe a certain positioning or the viewpoint which you have taken, then which may land up into certain kind of legal dispute. So if you can cover that aspect into your processes, then you will ensure that everything is been robust and you will not work. So we are more working towards the proactive rather than reactive on that. So this is because as we move forward, we have bifurcated our whole department into certain things, where one department only focus on the this operational aspect. So that will be more focused that how they can driven through a data or through exception reporting and then robust and standardize that. And another would be more on a proactive or working as an advisory, because our role is more from advisory as well as giving assurance. So we consider like 75% we will give assurance, 25% will work towards the advisory role, where we can help the business in achieving their objective. So that is somewhere that we are working on that.
So can we say that as an internal auditor, maybe there's also professional opportunity to look after how can we convert the internal audit into continuous auditing. So there may be corporates who will be looking for a solution where instead of internal audit which comes on quarterly or half yearly, if professionals are able to provide solution wherein the system has been placed where continuously exception report is generated and then it has been taken care, it can be a good opportunity for professionals to provide.
Yeah, so Chintan, that is a very important, because as we moving forward, and this is the areas where we are feeling that that could be areas of improvement. So what happened? This is at an organizational level, these efforts are being done. So if I said for Adani Group at an internal audit department, they are investing and doing it. But as I said, that if that same thing has been understanding as then created a business case of that as a professional, and then they come that, boss, why are you investing every year this much amount? Because in internal audit, what happen, even in risk base, if you are having a high risk area, you are going to cover every year. And if you are doing a traditional and a manual audit, you are going to follow the same process again. You will walk through, you will come up with the control testing, you will do a manual sampling of that, you will documentation, check the documentation. Whereas there could be alternate option in terms of the continuous auditing, because these are all these areas, all the data points are already captured into the some tools, some ERP system. And as a professional, if we can develop expertise into that, if I want to give assurance on this, because in any business, the audit universe more or less remains same. So if it is a mining, or is it a real estate, or is it a thermal, so that could be a one or two core business operation change, but the enabler services are remain same, either in terms of the HR or finance or security or safety. And there could be a risk, again that could be a laundry list of risk remains same, only their impact could change again based on the business. But again, you can come up with the continuous auditing areas, and where you can see that this is only 2 or 3 areas which I can work and understand your process, understand your process mapping, and come up with the continuous auditing area. Other than that, I already have a ready list of the areas which I can plug in play, and then I can able to give a continuous assurance. That is the main objective of that function that I can able to achieve, and also help you out in optimizing my cost of assurance. So that is something, it's a really area, and particularly where that the whole new technology, new data analytics, every world and every function, every department moving toward that. That could be only the solution when we are going forward, at the continuous auditing would be the area where a professional and every organizational setup has to work on.
Right. So taking a little further on this particular question, because it's really interesting for all participants to understand. So whether ERP, there are a lot of exceptional reports are generated from ERP. So whether that is pretty much is sufficient, or there is also need to have some automated tools to be developed, or that there's need to have some kind of technical tools to be developed to have the exceptional report sending through each respective person and then getting response from them.
So, Chintan, there is a 2-3 aspect to that. One is that because if you have a proper ERP system, point is that two part. One, if everything is on ERP, you can rely on ERP, and because if you have a data point, it's all the data are been captured into the various table. Now, standard ERP will give you 4 or 5 based on their understanding. But if in your context, in your business context, in your business background, if the process, if there is a certain challenge is happening in particular process, you develop the report based on the data points captured into the table into the ERP, and you can generate a exception report which can you used at a second line, which can be used by anyone. It is not only for the auditor, it is then used by the business, used by the second line, which is a financial controller or any other, and then definitely internal auditor. But if you have a data points which are from the multiple systems, suppose if you have a ERP, but for production there is a SCADA system, that for production you are relying on some other system, or there could be somewhere for managing your logistics and operation, you are relying on certain other tool. So there would be a different tools available, and then you want to do a analytics based on getting a data from these different tools, the information which been captured by this different tool. Then you need to have a certain framework where all this data could come into one we call as a data lake. But this is again a kind of a platform where all these data inputs come into that thing, and then you pick up the relevant information for your data analytics. But if majority of your process is on ERP, you can develop that used as a ERP standard product, standard reporting. But when you feel that they are having a limitation in terms of the areas to be covered as a data analytics, you can develop that, because in the data is already there and you can use it. The problem lies because we have a multiple, because ERP, again, if you SAP is more from the production, from the that is more their focus. But when you are, suppose we are a project company, we have a number of project, SAP doesn't support the project, so we have a separate mechanisms. For HR, they have very limited, we have a very huge number of HR and that have a different priorities, so we have to rely on certain system. So in that case, we have to have a data lake where these all data come into our system, and then we use a data analytics to generate an exception report on that. I hope I have answered that question.
No, I think it's really very, very useful information, and because you have been on the on the start of the journey, because for us it's a lot of new things which we have learned, because technology is something, and the continuous auditing, I think this is one of the very crucial point which we all learned. Yeah. So Harish, do you any this slide you are having, or how you do it?
Yeah, just a minute, I just check it.
Meanwhile,
Yeah,
participants, please you drop any question and answer any questions in the Q&A or chat box, and at the end again he will go through the question and will respond.
yeah. So this is something we talk about where we do assurance as well as advisory also. So I've covered that. It is from HR, safety, operation, on the operations, and thing end-to-end process, which we covered as a sales, revenue, project management, plant maintenance, manufacturing. So this is somewhere which covers from end-to-end business and support processes from our audit, because end-to-end process audit is also have a limitation in the sense you require more time. So more time, data, because there is a multiple process owner, then you have to discussion with the multiple process owner for closeout. So that is also keep in mind when you are selecting for end-to-end process audit. So which is that is what I have said, that from the risk assessment, when we found that this is a process very critical for the business success, we covered as a end-to-end, and then see, because they are having a lot of dependency on each other. This is somewhere we use as a data analytics reports which we use in our system. So it is everything is end to end. So two part to it. One is that on a field work on the data analytics, as I mentioned, there's a number of such exception reports has been generated, which has been data points which we captured from SAP and non-SAP system. Once that has been done, and the process which we do audit, and then based on that, what are the exception comes as a reporting, again, which has been automated, digitized and captured into our audit management system. So everything has been captured right from observations, who is responsible for that, what are the corrective and preventive action, what is the really root cause of it, what is the implication to the organization, and what is the target date on which the corrective and preventive done. And this has been keep a track. System itself is keeping a track of it. On a due date, alerts will go to the process owner that they have to update. Then we validate that, and then the closed into the system. If it is not been closed, then the escalation done to the CEO. This is again very system. Again, we do not have to wait. This is somewhere we are working along with the business, and to give assurance, whether it is not only that when you come and do an end-to-end process audit and come up with the audit report and you gone, what happened to next, then we have developed. And earlier used to be developed that it remains in the Excel. There were a number of Excel format in which open, close, and it's very difficult to keep a track of it. But this is a kind of real-time dashboard where when you have covered end-to-end process audit, because ultimately objective, because you have put up a lot of efforts and time into that, the real benefit would be the implementation of the various corrective preventive action, and that has to be ensured through a various data driven and the integrated system, which we call as the audit management system, where they give various online diagnosis of the various report, major issues, pending audit action, areas which required improvement. So that is somewhere we work on that. Yeah, so that's also, that's all. There are basically the areas which are already I covered. So various tools which I mentioned: data, idea, BI tool, legal tricks, and then yeah. So I think I'm through on my point. I'm really happy to take further questions and explain the issues.
There is one question in the Q&A box.
Let me check. With regard to end-to-end process, there are a standard set of processes. Eventually, these processes are configured in accounting the ERP that is used. The question is here, it is required for internal auditor to know the ERP in and out to suggest process improvement areas. What if the ERP is not equipped to handle the recommendation as given by internal audit? How this can be addressed? So one is that because as an internal auditor, as I mentioned, first is the objective and second is the process mapping. So first of all, process mapping. What are the process being followed? How the data has been captured? Because process walkthrough, mapping means process walkthrough. You have to sit along with the each individual. You take a one sample transaction. You have to sit with the each individual who is processing. If there is a data entry has been done by, suppose we have taken again the same example of procure to pay. So how the vendor onboarding, what is the physical process being followed? Once that physical process, then how the data entry is done into the system. So you have to take one example and walk through each of these aspects. That will help the internal auditor to know what are the data points they are putting up into the system, because they have to mention, may not require the technicality of the ERP, but as a process understanding, as a process mapping, you have to walk through each and every document. What are the physical document you are receiving? What are the digital documents has been prepared? What are the inputs been done by the process owner? You have to note down as a part of your process understanding, as a process flow. So once you have done, then you know that what are the data been captured by ERP, because everything, whatever the data input you put, you have to have this data has been got to into some table. So you have to have a broad understanding, basic understanding of ERP, how it works, and you know that there is some information is there in the ERP. Now only question comes whether there is exception report already available. If yes, then you can get it. If it is not, there could be areas where there is a multiple audit exception reports are there. You have to club, so you have to get that information of multiple. If it is a one of the areas, one of the time, you can get a information multiple exception report, copy into the Excel, then do a pivot Excel, and then come out with the conclusion what you want. If it is a one of the thing, or then if it is a continue, then you have to sit along with the things with the SAP and then see that if you can develop on that part. So this is how I can say when it is suggested that the what is not equipped to. So the question is, they required until to know ERP. So that is what need to know the process. You need to know, understand the data input, and that is why you can suggest the process improvement area. And if the ERP is not equipped to handle the recommendations given by internal auditor, so ERP is an enabler. So whatever the platform you are using is an enabler, and the objective is that and I understand is the ERP give covering the almost high and medium risk. If your recommendation is really the whole re-engineering of the process, then the ERP is not the solution even handle, because it required to change it. But if covers the low and medium, that could be a workaround, that could be a change around which you can adopt and ensure that it was being done. So there could be a customization also happen in the ERP if really your suggestion is so relevant in context with your business environment, and you feel that this is very peculiar to your business and it need to be captured into ERP, and which have a business case in terms of value delivery, cost optimization, then you can do that as a customization and implement that part. If it is not, it is a more from the monitoring, that could be an alternate way of managing that. So I hope that I answered that question.
Yes, I think it was really wonderful to have you, Harish ji. And I am personally thankful to you for sparing your time from busiest schedule. And I request my council colleague, C. Ruta. She has been doing wonderful work as a council colleague, and I'm happy to that she is here. Throughout this discussion, she was here and listening there. So I request Ruta to offer hearty vote of thanks.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, and a very well-deserved vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank you, Chintan bhai, for clearly designing and developing such a interesting, I would say interesting and useful internal audit symposium. So thank you very much for that also. As far as today's session is concerned, I think it was really what I'm also into internal audits, and I would really say this, that it will definitely give us a reference point about the end-to-end process. It's especially it gave a snapshot of the entire process in one slide, and it will definitely prove as a reference point. Harish ji, thank you so much, and it was really wonderful that you did an interactive session, because many a times it so happens that it is one to many, and then the many people think of some questions and they're wondering how to answer it. And I think that was really wonderful on your part to have initiated a discussion, and so that I think all us participants really benefited from this. So thank you, Harish, once again for having spared your time for all of us. Thank you so much. So now let us move on to our next session, and I will be really glad to introduce our today's moderator for the panel discussion, Silva, Shah madam. I think, Chintan, should we move ahead? And
No, yeah, Ruta, you're
yeah,
on the right. We should move
yes,
next to
yes.
the
So
Harish. Thank you so much.
shall I
Yes.
leave?
So thank
Actually,
you,
I have
Harish ji,
some
once
meeting.
again.
So
Thanks. Thanks a
yeah,
lot.
Yes,
thank
Harish,
you.
you can end the
Yes.
screen.
Yes, you.
You can end the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, sir.
Yes. So let me, I have the pleasure of introducing Silva. Silva is already here, and then she would be introducing the panelist of the, she's a moderator for today's session. Let me quickly introduce her. She is a very young chartered accountant, recently started her own practice in 2018. And she's not only a qualified chartered accountant, but also a company secretary, and is having an extensive experience in the field of audit, income tax, GST, and RERA. She is also a director, independent director at Yassen's Chemex Care Private Chemex Limited, and she is also proficient in risk and fraud detection as well as payroll processing work for USA-based companies. She is also a founder member partner of S. Silva and Associates. She is involved in crucial advisory and consultancy in the field of GST to corporates. Additionally, she has also written and contributed to an article on the subject Bitcoin, which was circulated uh, in Information Technology National Conference organized by ICAI. She has also articulated and executed various women-oriented programs, including National Women Conference at Ahmedabad, and is also a co-opted member of the International Taxation Committee at WIRC. Also delivered lectures at CMC India Limited, a Tata Group concern, running banking course and others. I think the list is so extensive, Silva. It is very nice. Which has also contributed to newspapers such as Ahmedabad Times, Gujarat Samachar, Divya Bhaskar for their articles on the subject of women empowerment, education system, and revenue budget. I think that is really wonderful. We are so glad to have you here with us today as a moderator. I'm sure you will do a wonderful job. So over to you, Silva. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam, for lovely introduction. A very good evening to the dignitaries, eminent speakers, and esteemed participants of the session. I'm truly honored to perform my role as a panel moderator for this crucial discussion on the topic of end-to-end process audit. This subject is not just about reviewing processes, but more importantly, about ensuring the efficiency, integrity, and compliance of these processes. In a world where businesses and organizations are constantly evolving and regulations are becoming more and more stringent, it has become paramount to guarantee that our processes are not just functional, but they also adhere to the highest standards of quality and legality. A process audit is the compass that helps us to navigate this complex landscape, ensuring that every stage of our operations is optimized and devoid of any potential pitfalls. In the next 1 hour, we'll delve into the depths of end-to-end process audits, examining the methods, the challenges, and the benefits it brings to the table. We will explore not only what end-to-end process audits are, but also why they are so crucial in today's environment. Before we begin, I would like to extend sincere gratitude to our esteemed panelists who have taken the time to join us today. Your expertise and experience will be instrumental in shaping the conversation and providing valuable insights. Without further ado, I take the opportunity to introduce our today's expert panelist. Our first panelist of the session, CA Raviraj Karia. It is with great pleasure that I introduce CA Raviraj Karia, sir, a highly accomplished finance professional with a remarkable career spanning over 21 years. Mr. Karia's expertise encompasses mergers and acquisitions, corporate treasury, commercial functions, risk management, governance, and more. He has consistently delivered value through internal audit, risk management, compliance, and forensic investigations. Mr. Karia's experience and contributions have had a profound impact on the pharmaceutical, life science, healthcare, and CRO sectors. he has played a pivotal role in both inbound and outbound acquisitions, driving strategic and transformational initiatives. Currently, Sir holds the esteemed position of Global Head of Internal Audit at Intas Pharmaceuticals in Ahmedabad. In this role, he oversees the audit function on a global scale, ensuring adherence to the highest standards of governance, risk management, and compliance. Please join me in welcoming and acknowledging CA Raviraj Karia, sir, for his valuable time. Our second panelist of the session, CA Koushik Chakrovarty. CA Koushik Chakrovarty, sir, a distinguished professional in the field of accounts, costing, and indirect taxation. With over 2 decades of experience, Sir has made significant contributions to construction and real estate sectors. Sir currently holds the position of Head of Accounts, Costing and Indirect Taxation at Patel Engineering Limited, a leading company in the construction sector. His journey in the corporate world began with the National Highways Authority of India, where he gained valuable insights into the intricacies of the infrastructure sector. Subsequently, Sir has joined DLF, a prominent name in real estate. His experience in the field expanded with roles at Hindustan Construction Company Limited and Tata Housing Development Company Limited, both renowned companies in the construction and real estate sectors. Sir's academic background is equally impressive. He is a BCom graduate with a gold medal. He holds a master's degree and is also a chartered accountant, a prestigious qualification that demonstrates his expertise in financial matters. Additionally, he has obtained a diploma in International Financial Reporting Standards from ACCA UK. Please join me in welcoming and acknowledging CA Koushik Chakrovarty, sir, for his invaluable time. With this formal introduction, I would invite both the panelists to share their insights on the current scenario of end-to-end process audit. CA Raviraj Karia, sir, over to you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Silva, for such a nice introduction. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, first of all, let me congratulate you for, being such a nice profession at a very early age. Sorry, Silva, I have to switch off my camera. Yeah, okay. Now, to your question, what is the current status of the end-to-end process? So it's a very gradual process in which, what happens is that, you have to invest a lot of time and efforts into establishing this end-to-end process audit. It starts with, contemplating, what is the requirement.
हेलो रवि सर
Yes.
सर आपका कैमरा ऑन करेंगे
Actually, I'm not able to.
Vishwa ji, he's actually outside. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please continue, Ravi.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm having some issue with that. So, what I was saying is that, it's an end-to-end process which requires a lot of commitment in terms of planning and executing, taking into account the risk management principles and the governance practices of the organization. And it is not the straight, simple, shifting from pre-audit to post-audit era. So the management mindset also has to be changed in this end-to-end process audits. So these are my views on it.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request CA Koushik Chakrovarty, sir, to throw some light on our today's topic, end-to-end process audit in this dynamic world.
Good evening, Ms. Silva. Good evening, Mr. Chintan, and my co-panelist, Mr. Raviraj. Thanks for having me here. Scenario, and day by day it is increasing. And the things have been evolved. That is the internal audit. Earlier, it was the review of accounting and other things, and your operations. Now, end-to-end process audit is very important to help management to assess risk, for governance, and for proper control. Now, what is process? The process is very important to design, which is required by the management based on the requirement of the industry, the business, and the challenges the company is facing. To understand the process, the auditor has to see the design of the process. Now, to understand that how to conduct that audit, to assess the risk, and to help management to prevent prevent errors and frauds and any other risk which are there in the business and the particular industry. So the risk management and the system, SOPs, and other things are very important to set the guidelines, to find the gaps, and find the efficiencies and effectiveness of the particular process. I think that's it from my side.
Thank you, sir. That is how we set the tone for our panel discussion. Now, moving to the panel discussion, my first question to Raviraj sir. Sir, let us start the discussion with importance of planning. The detailed planning is an important attribute to get the desired results in any field. What are the most important considerations we should keep in mind while planning?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So everything starts with the planning. So what we have adopted as a process of internal audit is that, first of all, at the start of the year, what we do is we take assessment of what is to be audited. So which means we take the audit universe into account. And from that audit universe, we have developed our internal score matrix. And basis that score matrix, what we have done is that, we bifurcate all the audit areas into whether we have to perform it once in a year, twice in a year, thrice, or maybe, once in 2 years, once in 3 years, or once in 5 years. So that's the first planning that we have to do. Second, what we do is that, during the year, once the areas are planned, what we do is we do take resources into account and their number of days, what we are what we have to perform. Then what we take is we take the area, and in that area also we have certain sub activities defined, which we take it from the risk and control matrix. So we prepare the terms of reference, which is covering most of the risk, which says what can go wrong. So let's say, for example, one fraud risk that we want to evaluate in procure to pay, that vendor and employee are having same PAN account, having both in vendors and employees. So this is a scenario, is a one line item of what can go wrong. So kind of what can go wrong, we prepare a terms of reference document. And out of that terms of reference document, what we do is we exactly minutely plan these for, let's say the audit is for 30 days or 60 man days. Then we allocate it on a daily basis, what is to be done and what tests are to be performed. All this planning is basis 3 documents. First is the risk and control matrix that is being written at the start of the year and reviewed. The SOPs that is being followed by the organization. And the third is that what is our level of comfort from the previous audit, if we have done those previous audits. So These are the important elements that actually help us while we do a planning. So sometimes, if we want to pick up some focus areas which is relevant in terms of compliance, or which is relevant in terms of commercial activities, and if we have to cover it in detail, the planning is very important, because you have to also see into it that the audit calendar is made in such a way that your auditees are also available. So let me give you a practical example that when you are planning an audit for an overseas entity, you also need to take care of their calendars in terms of their holidays, their compliance days. So let's say, for example, if you're planning an audit in the first week of any month, probably the finance and accounts team will not be available. So your finance and accounts audit of that particular entity is not possible. And if you're planning it in the last week, then the operations and the sales department will not be available. So planning plays a very important role. Also, you need to consider their blackout days, or their days where they are doing their statutory audit or tax audit or something like that. So certain functions and certain areas, when you plan, you need to take care of all these small things, and then you do a detailed planning. So this is my practical reply to your question.
Thank you, sir. That was how micro planning can help you achieve the object of end-to-end process audit.
Yes.
I would request participants, if they have any questions, they can write in the chat box, so our panelists would be able to answer those questions. My next question to Koushik, sir. Sir, you have been heading accounts and finance function of a complex industry, construction and engineering sector, where the work has been carried out at various sites spread across the country. What role an internal auditor can play in this?
As you rightly mentioned that our industry is very complex, that construction industry, and and that is work in various remote locations in like Jammu and Kashmir, Arunachal Pradesh, and Himachal Pradesh. So it is we don't get the skilled laborers, and it is very difficult to get very good people there and resources. And when you are working at remote locations, then and you are handling various that is departments like procurement, material management, then subcontracting, and your machinery, plant and machinery. There are so many areas are there. So it is very important to have a control on all the areas. Otherwise, there may be pilferage, that is fraud, and other things that is rework, which may that is cause that is cash flow issues and other problems. And to do that, that is proper planning, audit planning is required. Now, that is, we have currently 25 to 30 running projects, and it is not possible to handle each and every project at a time. So proper audit planning is required to cover all the projects throughout the year. So generally, we take 4-5 projects per quarter, so that we can, that is in 2 months, so that we can cover, that is 20 to 25 projects in a year, to cover the entire areas in the audit. We have SOPs, and we have proper business plan, and which is designed, and which our auditor needs to verify during the audit. Now, our main problem area is that is whatever the material we are receiving, that the labor who are working there, whether they are really there or not, we are using the proper technologies like drone technologies, biometrics to control their attendance, and the machinery, whether the machinery is working or not. Now, when the auditors are checking our processes, they have to find out whether there are any loopholes or not. Because anything that is this market or this industry is very competitive, and that's why that is the margin which we are getting is very thin. And unless and until that is we are saving, that is we are controlling all the leakages and other things, it is very difficult to sustain in this industry. So that's why the role of the internal auditor is very, very crucial. And they are the guiding factor of the management to understand all the leakages and to help the bottom line of the company. Now, that is while doing the audit, the internal auditors first they have to understand this industry, because understanding of the business is very important to throw the light on the lack of processes and whether any improvement is there or not, whether any risk is there, and other governance issues. And based on their recommendations, that is, first the management has to understand the risk, the factor, that is a moderate risk, high risk, and other things. So role of the internal auditor in our industry is very, very crucial.
My next question to Raviraj sir. So can you share a real world example where you have encountered of how an end-to-end process audit identified significant improvements or risk within your organization?
Yeah. I would like to first of all explain what end-to-end process of audit is concerned. So, like we discussed about planning. So, when plan an audit, it's not the only the area written in the audit, but it is also something that gets discovered during the process understanding. So the first stage, once you plan an audit, the first thing that you need to do is to do a kickoff meeting with the process owner, just to acquaint yourself with who are all participants in the audit and what they actually look into it. Then you scheduled the detailed process understanding meetings. You match those discussions along with your risk and control matrix as well as your SOPs. Because sometimes what happens is SOPs are written, let's say, a year before. And during the year, because of the change of business requirements, they make changes into the processes. So it is very important to go and meet the process owner and get a reiteration of what they are actually following into. Then comes an area where you take a data analytics. You actually either obtain information and data from the process owner, or you dig out the information through your own sources, like you can have an access to the ERPs and you get the information. Then you have to also do an in-depth analysis basis your process understanding from the process owner, that what is the exception to what they say, right? Basis that, again, you need to discuss this with the process owner and conclude as an observation. Now, this is one part to it. Second part is that when you are also checking the risk and control metrics and the key significant controls, you also come across certain areas like who has an access to that information. So who has a posting right of PO as well as GRN and as well as invoices. So there is a three-way match in our ERP, but whether the one all the three transactions are being posted by one person or not. So this is one practical thing that you need to also check. So which is falling into access control. Secondly, what you need to do is that when you are analyzing end-to-end process, you need to also put the yourself into process owner's shoes, that what are the day-to-day difficulties that they are facing in executing those transactions. And from that, you would know that what are the controls that either are missing or what are the controls that the process owner has put in place. So this is also one of the important step. Now, to give a real life example of how end-to-end process actually benefits to you, is that I would like to take an example of one of the audits that we have done in one of the European countries, wherein when we obtained the information before the start of the audit, we went through it. We found that everything seems to be okay, but at the time of when we started understanding the process and how they are executing the transactions, we come across with a gap in gross to net transaction. So what is a gross to net transaction? Gross to net transaction is such that in pharmaceutical industry, when you sell a particular product, you sell at a particular price. Later on, basis the commitment with the ultimate customer, you have to give credit to your customer who is not the ultimate customer but a channel partner, and then channel partner will actually pass on that benefit to the ultimate customers. Now, in Europe, this is very very common that the prices get fluctuated for the generic pharmaceutical products. And then what happens is that if the price actually drops from the committed price, then you have to give them a credit, further credit. So let's say if I have sold something for €1 and I have committed them to a gross to net adjustment, gross price was €2, I have given it €1, then I have to give only €1. But sometimes what happens is that the price gets dropped to 80 cents. So I have to give further 20 cents. And if the price gets more, then I'm supposed to get 20 cents also. So it's an adjustment, continuous adjustments, which is called shelf stock adjustments. So what we note is that when the person who is dealing with this process has to continuously look for the information that he receives from the counterpart. And if you do a simple data analytics, you will not able to know. But if you match the batch of that particular product, you will be able to know that where you have already given a shelf stock adjustment, and when the prices have gone up, you have to receive from them. So when you actually understand the process from the process owner, and when you actually re-perform certain things, then you will be able to know that there is a value in your identification and of the observation. So according to me, in-depth understanding of the process and walkthrough of the business processes actually gives more insights to the auditor rather than only reading the SOPs and risk and control matrix.
Right, sir. Deep understanding of the industry in which we are operating will help us to gain the object of this end-to-end process audit. My next question to Koushik, sir. The role of internal audit is now changing from mere vouching verification process audit. What made this shift and why process audit has been most sought by the management now?
Yes, over the years, the role of the auditor has been changed. It is mainly because the need of the business, the complexities, the challenges. Earlier, it was like audit of transactions. That is, the approach was very narrow, and in that case, it was focused on number of transactions and instances. But now in process audit, the main focus is where it has gone wrong. Is there any black in the process? Because if I take one example of that material receipt, so there is a proper process, that is when we are getting that material, whether there is a gate entry or not, and whether that the stores person who is receiving the material, whether he's taking entry of the material in system, and whether there is a quality check, and whether there is a rejection, then what is the system. and whether we're intimating the vendor or not. So this is the process. And after getting all the material, when we are sending the stores team, they are sending to accounts department, whether the accounts department are checking all the invoices, that is your e-bill and challans, everything. So this is a process of that receipt of material that is from start to end. Now earlier, it used to happen that the auditor used to focus on how many GRNs that particular stores person has not entered at the time of receipt of the material. Now, in case of process audit, the auditor focus whether all the people who are in the system, they are following the process of the material receipt till completion of the voucher verification and payment to the vendor. So this thing is focusing whether there is loophole in the system, and if there is a loophole, how that can be addressed, and what is the risk in that particular process. That is that one or two misses is not important. Whether there is any risk in that miss, whether it is that deliberately those people are doing, whether there is any fraud, or it is just a mistake. And if it's a mistake, so what are the actions can be taken by the management to stop that? So that is the importance of the process audit. So if I take the in case of the manpower, that is we have that is biometric system, because when there are manpower at remote locations, it is very difficult to take control over that is the manpower who are working there, and that is a huge force, and the local people are there. So without using biometric, so that is a process. The role of the auditor is to check whether that biometric is there or not, whether the company, even that process is there. That is in SOP, it is mentioned that at the time of entering into the project, that they have to use the biometric. So whether the people who are coming, the manpower they are coming, they are using the biometric or not. So that is a part of the process and the system audit or process audit. So these things are very important in today's scenario. It is not that is the narrow approach cannot be taken in today's world. You have to take the overall scenario and to understand that why the people are bypassing the system, bypassing the process, and how that can be controlled. So that holistic approach is very much important in today's scenario.
So increasing complexity, risk management, and quality improvement are some of the key drivers that are influencing management for process audit. My next question to Raviraj sir. Sir, what methodologies or techniques do you employ to gather data and evidence during the execution of an end-to-end process audit? And how do we determine the extent of reliance that can be placed on such evidences gathered from various sources?
Okay, very good question. So when we actually do the audit, we gather information in so many forms. First of all, as I said earlier, that we get a business presentation from the auditees. So that is the one set of information. Second set of information is that generally, whenever there is a big organization, they have ERP systems. And from that ERP systems, you have to gather your most of the information in terms of table reports and things like that. You also have access to their documentation in terms of, let's say, if you are doing a audit of procure to pay, then you will have all the details with respect to the quotation comparison sheets, their purchase orders, their GRNs, and their invoices. And when it is related to the sales, exactly the reverse situation. So you will have a customer sales order, then you will punch a sales order into your system. The material will be picked up from the inventory, and then inventory will be debited, and then shipment will be done. So all this documentary evidence, along with the information that you have gathered from the ERP system, is used as a evidence to establish whether there is a gap as explained in the process or as written in the SOP or as written in the risk and control matrix. Now, whenever you have to rely on this information, so first of all, if you get any information which is from the system, you need to check whether those system data can be edited and who can edit it. So it again goes back to the access control. So who is able to modify that information, and whether you have to establish that whether someone has modified that data or not from the system change log. So that is one set of information that you can verify and you can rely on. Second, as I said, you have GRN or you have invoices. At the same time, like, Casey sir said that you have gate controls. So your your security gate will also play an important role putting a stamp on the back of the invoice or delivery challans. So that is also one set of information. So when you actually pick up the samples of the data, what you take end-to-end checks on those samples, which starts from, as I said, in procure to pay, you check whether the PR was rightly created and approved into the system. The quotations were compared, and only L1 or maybe L2 is given the order with proper justification. So you need to note those justification and all. Third, you need to then see the GRN, and you have to see whether the gate control entries are there or not, whether they have notified the proper people into the system once the goods have arrived or not. Then you have invoices, which is also a third-party source because it is not generated in-house in the system. So these are all evidences that you gather and you actually match them to establish whether these evidences can be relied upon or not. So in one of the classic fraud case, earlier in my career, we have seen is that, let's say, for example, you have a procurement person negotiating for particular type of material coming in from the supplier. In some of the staple items, you have standard catalogs, and you negotiate on discount on those catalog items. So let's say there are thousands of chemicals that is coming in, and you have agreed on, let's say, certain set of chemicals 35% discount, certain set of chemicals 25% discount, and things like that. What has happened is that the procurement manager and the dealer of that company has collided, and they have created a separate catalog on their own, and they got it printed exactly as it was of the original company, which was with an inflated price. So now, whenever a person of a normal internal auditor will look at the catalog which is available from the auditee and check whether the pricing are right or not. Now, how do you discover this? So if you remember in earlier days, and now GST era, in earlier days, if you import certain materials, or if you buy something from a manufacturer, they used to give an excise gate pass from which you can take an excise credit. And that used to form part of the documents. So when we actually gone into detail into a particular invoice and checked that what is the purchase price of a dealer and what is the transfer price to us, we identified that it it is having a huge difference. Then we contacted the company and asked for the quotations, brochure, and the catalog again, and we found out actually that we whatever catalog that we were using was fraudulent, right? So it's a sixth sense of the auditor also sometimes, and sometimes the eye for the audit, which actually determines the extent of reliance that you can place on the documentary evidence presented to you. So this is how I would like to respond to this.
So we can say that this extent of reliance is determined by assessing its source, reliability, corroboration, relevance, and importantly, materiality.
Yeah.
My next question to Koushik sir. Presently, we reside in a technologically advanced era, characterized by a heightened integration of technology into our daily lives as well as our professional environment. What tools or technologies do you use to streamline the audit process and enhance efficiency? Could you share an example of a challenge you encountered during the execution of an audit and how you overcome it?
A very good question and very relevant in today's scenario post this COVID. And the technology is very, very important in today's scenario. Earlier the auditors and we used to use the tools. That is, we used to go through various documents and identify the areas and things that is from where during the audit. And it was we used to spend, the auditors used to spend a lot of time to gather information, and they used to start that analysis of those information. And the technologies, using technologies nowadays, that is the business intelligence, artificial intelligence, and other tools, we are gathering information in no time. So the auditor can devote nowadays more time for analysis of data rather than gathering data and spending more time. Either earlier it was almost 50-50, or that is 60-40 time they used to spend for gathering and analysis. Now it is almost 20-80. So 20% time they are gathering using their various tools for sampling, and you can say data mining for aging analysis. And after that, that analysis part starts. Now, if we take one example, that is for, you can say that is the aging of the material. So what of the materials or spare parts we are using for our projects? There may be materials which are not used at projects, that is unused materials, and and the spare parts. The project team, their tendency is to buy materials without their uses. So even though there are materials at site, at stock, they are still purchasing materials. There may be various motives for that. Earlier, it was very difficult for management or auditors to identify those areas. Now, after using, that is, your business intelligence techniques and artificial intelligence, we can get an idea, that is, which materials are lying for a longer time, which is the period, that the aging analysis of those materials. And we are also using, that is, if that one particular project, they bought some material and they are not using that particular material for a particular project, whether we can shift that material to another project which is nearby, because the transportation cost is another factor in that case. But further, that is, when you are analyzing your stock using your technology, you can also, before placing any order or before purchasing, when you are getting an indent from your stores department or any other department, so you can analyze, that is, whether the particular material is lying in your store, or in that case, whether it is required to purchase or not. So you can manage your cash flow, your working capital properly. Again, another example is your machinery hire charges. In our case, that is huge in construction industry, and it is not possible to send your own machineries when the project duration is very short from that is your city area to that remote areas. So when you are hiring machineries for your project, so you have to monitor that is, you are utilizing those machineries properly or not. Sometimes we send our machineries and our own people, they don't use machineries and they hire. The tendency is to hire from third party. So you are not using your machinery, even though you invested on those machineries. At the same time, you are hiring, and that is you are incurring cost. Though those things were very difficult in that is earlier era to understand, because we had to rely upon that is other documents or that is the statements given by project team. Now, when we are using that various tools to analyze data, it is very easy to gather info, that is where we are using hired machinery and where that is we are using our own machinery. If there is a breakdown, what is the reason for that breakdown and what is the time for that breakdown, that is idle period. And if you're not using your own machinery and using the hired machinery, what is the reason, what is the proportion, and all the things, all the analysis, that is that, and you can do that is using BI techniques, that is business intelligence and other tools, which are not possible in earlier days. So this is the main reason, and you see that is now another part is there, that is after COVID, in our industry, it is very difficult to send that is auditors to remote projects. If you ask people to go to Jammu and Kashmir or Arunachal border, that is, we don't get good people. And sometimes we get rejections from our audit team also. But nowadays, that auditors from Mumbai or from Delhi, they can check in system using the technology and that other techniques, and they can gather all the data and they can give the management that is the pain areas. So the technology has changed the entire process of audit, the entire scenario of the audit for risk management, for proper governance and proper control. That is from my side.
Right, sir. So it is all about leveraging technologies like audit management softwares, blockchain, AI, while while we are ensuring data security and compliance.
Right.
My next question to Raviraj, sir. So what are the key constituents and essential components that typically constitute an audit report for an end-to-end process audit, reflecting the comprehensive examination of organizational process? And if you could please elaborate on the methodologies and practices you employ to effectively communicate and present your audit findings along with recommendations to various stakeholders within the organization, so as to ensure clarity and comprehensibility.
Very good question. So first of all, the template that is generally is agreed with the auditees, that at the end of the audit, what in what format and in what form we would be communicating our observations to various key stakeholders. So let us understand who are the key stakeholders. So generally, there is a process owner, and in that process owner, let's say there is a procurement process, sales process, finance and accounts. So the head of the department is called the process owner. But there are certain sub-processes also into that process. So those people are considered as an auditee, and each auditee have different roles to play in this. So first of all, what we do is, as I mentioned earlier, we do data analytics, we do process walkthroughs, and we understand the processes from the process owners as well as the SOPs and risk and control matrix. Now, what we do is, when we actually identify a gap in the process, we actually narrate in a presentation. And what we do is we write a process understanding first. So we will give a brief about the process. What is our understanding? Then we will mention about the gap that we have seen. So let's say, for example, if I'm trying to describe a sales process, so then I will write into the presentation that, as per our understanding, we understand that there are 3 channel partners for a particular sales in the region, right? And then, when we actually want to identify and write a gap, we would say that, one out of these 3 channel partner, we observed so and so things. So what happens is that, the process owner nowadays are getting more mature in their, way of the work that they do. And what we have observed is that, it's at least in the metros and in the big cities like us, people have accepted internal audit as a function which will keep a watch on the transactions on an overall basis, and they will bring a value addition to it. So when we interact with them, what they also, explain to us that in what circumstances they have taken what kind of decisions. So those decision making notes also form part of the report writing. So what happens is that we will also write that in what circumstances what action was taken and basis which what exception was created, right? And then what we do is that we actually discuss these things with each and every process owner within the team of that process owner. And then, for a particular organization, there will be certain level of hierarchies. So let's say the process owner reports to either a bigger process owner which has 4 or 5 process into the control, like CEO kind of a thing, or a president of a business, or maybe there are 3-4 functions which are getting reported into one function. Let's say supply chain. So supply chain, in supply chain you will have a demand planner also into it, a procurement person also into it, logistics person also it, inbound and outbound kind of a thing. So if you are doing a, let's say, audit of a logistics function, you will have a process owner for logistics and you will have a supply chain head as well. And then supply chain head will ultimately report into the CEO. So what we need to do is we need to close the observation at logistics head, then supply chain head, then CEO, and then ultimately gets into the promoter level or the independent director level. So these are various channels through which you have to go through the observation and discuss. And each process owner has different things to get out of those observations. For the audit committees, when we write a report, we write a concise report and we club certain observations into one. So that they get a flavor that, what 4 areas were having gaps. And what we do is we give a proper elaboration into the presentation, sometimes more, because the independent director or the promoter would not know the nitty-gritty of the processes. They would not know how the transactions are getting affected. So it is more important you give more background in the audit committee slides than the presentation. So then, you give them a kind of an education into the process, and they will then get apprised and understand what the observation is all about. Then comes the mention of the risk and its implications. So what generally our endeavor is that, as I mentioned in my earlier response to one of the questions, is that we prepare what can go wrong, that is terms of reference through on which we are doing an audit. Now, what happens is that if you are doing an audit, you have to also see that, what risk you are identifying and against which what your observation is. So we write those what can go wrong, those risk items on that observation, and then we give some recommendations as a solution to it. Because identifying problem is not the only thing that, an auditor has to do. They also have to come up with the solution which will actually address that risk and solve the problem. It is easy to pinpoint something, but it is very difficult to put yourself into the shoes of the auditee and resolve that issue. So we give management recommendation exactly to the matching of what the solution should be. And then comes the portion of management action, which has the corresponding action plan that an auditee will take basis the recommendation to fix those challenges that we have identified. And those each challenge, let's say if you have got 4 observations into one, then they will have to give 4 replies how they want to fix that. And those 4 will have a different timelines to complete. So let's say if the observation pertains to recovery of some amount, then they have to go to different people to recover that amount, like say different vendors or maybe different customers to recover the amount. So they will take a horizon and a timeline within which they will recover that value. There are certain process changes that they have to carry out. So then they are the processes are interdependent, and within the department and outside the department also. So they have to collaborate with them and get the timeline for that. And the ultimate thing is that what we do is all this is presented into a couple of slides. Let's say, for example, one observation gets into a couple of slides. One is a narrative, second is the risk implications, third is the recommendation, and fourth is the action plan. In the action plan also, what we take care is that we will ask them that whether these action plans are technology dependent or capex dependent. Because ultimately, sometimes the process owner would say that they will fix it, but then the fixing part will either need some more capex to be incurred or some application changes that they will need. So let's say if the ERP system is making a false calculation of certain claims, then they need to reconfigure the IT system, or they need to put maybe additional controls or maybe generate additional reports. So that is also a cost to the organization to get the correct output. So what we do is we also write in the observation whether there was a compliance issue, there was a system issue, or it is a capex dependent item. So the audit committee would also understand that how critical this is, and how easily this will be implemented, or it will be some other financial approvals to correct those things. So this is how we try and see that the reports are impactful, and we deploy these kind of methodologies and practices wherein the auditee and the auditor both come to a common conclusion that that yes, these observations can be implemented and the organization will get actual benefit out of it.
Certainly. So an audit report for an end-to-end process audit is composed of major constituents, from methodology to compliance assessment. And effective communication through these reports ensure utmost clarity and actionable insights for organizational improvement for their proactive stakeholders. My next question to Koushik sir. Sir, can you shed light on the systematic approach you adopt for the process of prioritizing and categorizing issues which are identified during the course of audit, emphasizing their significance and potential impact, which is a pivotal aspect of the report?
Well, that is the most important part from our side or management side. When that is we are getting we are getting that audit report, the first thing is that is our approach to handle those observations and that report. Generally, we take that risk-based approach. That is, what is the risk? Whether it is a critical risk, whether it is a high risk, the moderate risk, or that is the minimal risk. Now, based on the risk part, that is, we analyze and then we discuss with our in our risk management committee. That is how to address those reports and based on the risk parameter. First thing is, we can say, if I take one example, um, if there is a delay, that is or in case of GST, that is a non-filing of GST, and there is a loss of input credit. That is after 6 months, we don't get credit after March. So when there is a non-filer and there's a loss of input credit, first we check whether there is any such report of non-filer or not. And if there is a non-filer, whether that party is still working with us or not. If that party is not working with us, and then that party is a non-filer, that the risk is very high. And we have to check, that is how to recover that money or how to get that credit, otherwise that will be a loss. So those are the areas, how to categorize that is the risk, and to discuss with various process heads or system heads, like your that operational head when it is related to operation, when it is the procurement head when it is related to procurement, or the mechanical head when it is related to your machineries, or HR head related to your manpower. So various departmental heads are required for this discussion, and the generally after getting the report, we distribute the work after the discussion and tell that entire team, that is how to handle the particular work or the particular area, and how to address this issue, and whether this is a repeated one or it is the first time, and whether it is a new risk or it is the earlier one also. Well, that similar type of thing was there in our earlier report. If there is a new risk, generally we check that whether it is a non-compliance risk or there is a financial risk. So this type of approach or risk-based approach is very important to address that audit report and to take that future action. So coming to your question, that is how we take this audit report, and what is our approach? Yes, that our approach is very systematic, and it is a risk-based approach to address the points or the concerns raised in the audit report.
So we can say that by adopting this systematic, holistic approach, we ensure that audit report effectively communicates the significance of identified issues, enabling informed decision-making and meaningful actions to address them.
Right, that is the creation of your environment is also very important in that case.
My next question to Raviraj sir. What specific measures and protocols are put in place to meticulously monitor and track the implementation of audit recommendations subsequent to the issuance of this audit report?
This is very, very important. So most of the time, what happens is that many auditors are interested in making a certain presentation to the audit committee, and then they leave it there. So what happens is generally there are either cells created within the finance department to track the implementation status of the audit issues, or this duty is also casted to the internal auditors to keep a track and confirm to the audit committee that whether the issues identified earlier are properly implemented in the organization or not. Why it is so important is that, with the great effort, the auditee, process owner, and the auditors identified certain gaps into the process. And then they bring value to the table by, in terms of either savings or in terms of revenue enhancement or profit increase or things like that. And later on, if the observations are not implemented, the way it was expected and discussed in the audit committees and the board meetings, the entire exercise gets failed. So what we have as an as an organization, what we have developed, that we have developed a tracker for all the audit observations that we have identified. All the critical, high, medium, low observations are classified with respect to the process owner and with respect to the audit that we perform. Now, as I said in the first response to a question, that we make a planning during the year. So what we do in planning, we keep certain days separately for only checking whether the previous audit observations have been implemented or not. And if they are not implemented, we will highlight those items the first thing in the next report. That is number one. Number two, what we have done is we have prepared, with the help of technology, we have created a tool within our organization to map all those observations into that tool. And that tool automatically sends email to the process owners on a periodic intervals with a copy to their HODs that so-and-so audit observation is lying, not implemented or is in progress for implementation, and we seek status in front of those observations. And we have created a functionality into the tool that the auditee can upload the audit evidence or the management actions that they have taken into that tool, and it is available to both auditees and us simultaneously for the future references. So by this, what we are doing is we are effectively managing the entire audit program and entire audit cycle. What happens is that the audit observation is one, and the effective implementation of the audit observation is the real value to the organization. Because identifying, as I said earlier, identifying the problem is very easy. Giving a solution is a second part. And actually seeing the solution, whether it has worked or not, is the real benefit or value addition that an auditor can bring to the organization.
To meticulously track the implementation of audit recommendations, assigning clear responsibilities and establishing action plan is the key to drive effective change. My question to Koushik sir. Sir, could you provide insights into the methods and metrics used for gauging the enduring impact and overall efficacy of the recommendations on the audited processes over the long term?
That is the efficiency and effectiveness of the recommendations are very important. That is, after getting the audit recommendations, the first thing is to check the quality of the observations, because that is very important. Because our total entire thing that is depend on that is the observations and their quality. Whether there is any potential fraud or error that is prevented by that observation, whether there is any cost savings initiative, whether there is, we also check that audit cycle time, that is how they cover that audit period. Because by seeing that your earlier observations and present observation, you can clearly understand there is a quality of the audit also. That is how they have conducted that audit, and what are the areas our auditors have covered, and what are the areas they have not covered, and how much time they have devoted for a particular area or particular section, and that is the population or the data they have covered in their audit. Now, there are other things, that is whether there is any recovery plan that is if it is mentioned in their audit report. Because when that is what we are raising, say we are raising any bill to our debtors or our client, if there is anything which is pending for a long time, and if it is pending for a long time, what is the reason? Sometimes the auditors, they simply mention that this thing is pending for, say, 180 days or some 360 days or so. But they do not mention the reason for that particular reason, whether that particular, whether it is pending because of some contractual issues or something pending from our side or some faulty work or any other reason. So these type of recommendations or particular mentioning of a recommendation is very much important to take action from management's end. Now, you see that there are some other type of recommendations like streamlining of the processes. That is very important part, because when you are analyzing your process, that is your system, to strengthen the system, that analysis of that part is also important. It is not always that monetary part, that is the recovery part, or that is another part. And streamlining of processes or strengthening your processes or systems, it is a very important part. What the auditors are recommending, what they are suggesting, and whatever they're suggesting, that is what is the impact of that, whether that part is doable or not in your scenario. Because sometimes the auditor, they recommend without understanding the business processes or scenario. So the situation is also important. So risk management committee, after getting their report, we sit, we discuss with all the stakeholders, and we take proper action plan based on the recommendations and the risk part. And again, that is the parameter of the risk. So analysis and gauging that report is very important before taking any action from management's part.
So it is all about tracking key metrics and assessing strategic alignment. Stakeholder feedback and comprehensive documentation plays a pivotal role in sustaining these improvements.
Very good.
As we come to the end of this enlightening session, it is my privilege to express gratitude to both the esteemed speakers, participants, and contributors. Both the expert panelists showed us a clear picture into the world of process audits, exploring the intricacies of how organizations can achieve efficiency, effectiveness, and compliance from start to finish. Our speakers have shared their profound insights, experiences, and expertise, shedding light on the importance of meticulous auditing and the positive impact it can have on an organization's operations. We have learned that end-to-end process audits are not merely about identifying shortcomings, but more importantly about driving positive change and continuous improvement. The knowledge shared here today will undoubtedly pave the way for organizations to optimize their process, enhance quality, and achieve greater transparency. My sincere thanks to both the speakers. Heartfelt appreciation to our speakers who generously shared their knowledge and experiences. Your insights have been invaluable, and your commitment to excellence in process auditing is truly commendable. Furthermore, our sincere gratitude goes to the organizing committee and all the individuals behind the scenes who have worked tirelessly to ensure the smooth execution of this event. Your efforts have not gone unnoticed, and we are deeply grateful for your great work. In closing, let us take this opportunity to reflect on the valuable insights we have gained from today's session and apply them in our respective organizations. The journey towards achieving excellence in end-to-end process audit is ongoing, and your dedication to this endeavor is key to future success. Thank you once again to both the speakers, participants, and contributors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think,
Thank you.
Silva, you already thanked panelists, but I think there's need to thank. Sanket, are you there? Sanket?
Yes, Chintan bhai.
Can you have a well-deserved word of thanks? I know the both speakers, Koushik and Raviraj, they have done a wonderful task, and everyone is glued to that. See, if you just look at the participants' numbers are not being changed. Everyone is just thinking what will come next. Sanket, can you please give?
It was a wonderful session. By both the panelists have explained automation and technologies used in the audit field. So it was a great learning from the panelists. They have given in-depth knowledge how we can use the technologies in our day-to-day field of audits. And the moderator also asked the very good questions It was a wonderful. Every round the corner, she asked the question, Silva sir. So I'm also thankful to the moderator and both the panelists, CA Koushik Chakrovarty sir and Raviraj sir, on behalf of the WRC of ICI. And thank you, Chintan bhai. Thank you, participants, for patiently hearing our session.
Yeah, before we end, I think just one very important thing.
The intentions also has been,
yeah. Okay, before we end, just one important thing. Tomorrow is the 28th October, and we have topic is AI in IAM. I think both panelists plus Harish Sharma ji, they both all focus on technology. And tomorrow's topic is AI. How can we use artificial intelligence in internal audit? And we have a faculty plus tomorrow there is panel discussion also. So please join at 4:30. And my heartiest thanks to the dear panelist, CA Koushik Chakrovarty ji and CA Raviraj Karia ji for sharing a valuable experience, because I know both of them are so much busy and occupied in their industry work, but still they come out to share their practical experience to all of the. So much thanks to each one of you. And Silva, you have been really doing a wonderful job of moderating and ensuring that everybody get engrossed. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity.
Yes.
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you very much, C. Chintan bhai.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you,
Thank you
Ketan
very
bhai.
much.
Thank you,
Sanket.
C. Silva.
See
Thank
you
you
all
very much.
tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.